Unauthorized observer identified tower optics traced to Valencia Holdings. Shell for Aerodyne Solutions, same adversary who downed Sierra Flight last year. Crux's voice filtered, genderless by modulator. Lenya whispered, "They're here. Now." Extraction window open for 12 hours. If compromised, burn assets. Lenya closed the cum. Extraction? Unacceptable. Too many innocent trainees. She needed to stay. Dawn bled gray over the compound when Lenya jogged perimeter for exercise. Muscles protested smoke fatigue, yet obeyed. She passed warehouses, drone hangars, the watchtower where the observer had stood. Empty now but scuff. Marks marred the gravel tripod feet impressions. A gull landed on the railing, cocking its head. Lenya followed its gaze to the horizon where thunderheads massed. Weather shift coming. Good. Chaos camouflage decisions. Back at the barracks. She showered. Changed into duty fatigue standard issue. But sleeves rolled to reveal her tattoo deliberately. Let them look. Best misdirection sometimes was blunt. Exposure. 800. Briefing room C smelled of stale coffee and ancient projector bulbs. Reese waited with Colonel Bryce, Vector Shield commander, and two plainclothesmen who wore their handguns like unresolved arguments. Bryce opened. "Ms. Vogt, you saved lives, and we thank you. We also need clarity on how you accessed a restricted." "Override." Lenya inhaled, kept shoulders relaxed. "I memorized schematics during downtime." One agent bearded, eyes like winter slid a database record across the table. A digital map of Arctic flight paths, coordinates overlay identical to her tattoo. "This pattern," he said, tapping, "was classified until 18 months ago." "Why?" "Is it on your skin?" Lenya considered lies, discarded them. "Half-truth then. It's commemorate. The mission I supported saved refugees during a polar evacuation." Reese's brow arched. "Which mission?" "The file is redacted even to my level." Lenya met her gaze. "Then you cannot verify nor deny," Bryce sighed. "Enough chess. The department is sending auditors. Until they arrive, you're confined to base." "Confined, but—" Sabotage threat remained. Aerodyne Solutions. Sierra Flight downed. They would strike again. Lenya nodded compliance outwardly. Inside, gears engaged. Hangar 2, 11:30. Drone demo pre-flight. Engineers bustling. Lenya entered under pretense of inventory check. She inspected lithium packs, scanning serials. 2 crates had tampered seals. Adhesive too fresh. She cracked. One open inside. A surplus of transmitter chips tuned to frequencies used by Aerodyne hijack protocols. Proof of planned interference. Footsteps approached Callahan again. "Major Reese wants you. Security office." Lenya closed the crate gently. "I'll follow." They walked across tarmac shimmering in midday heat. Lenya slowed near the water tower and murmured, "Drop a, if you've ever been underestimated." Callahan blinked, confused, but the phrase seated watchers through unseen cameras, an audience she sensed beyond walls. Let them register the call. Inside security, Reese stood by a holographic display showing the sabotage timeline. She pointed. "Evidence suggests insider. You were alone in hangar 2 minutes ago. Explain these transmitters." She angled a box of chips on the desk. Lenya thought, too quick. Someone framed her. She said, "Chain of custody missing." "These could have come from external crate." Reese crossed arms. "You deny placing them?" "Deny and offer you the real culprit." Lenya tapped the hologram controls, rerouting footage she'd covert hacked earlier. The tower observer entering supply gate with a loader bot. Timestamped 1600 hours prior. Bryce, on conference link, leaned in. "That gate was sealed." "Override keycard," Lenya said. "Issued only to level 5 contractors, namely Aerodyne's field techs." Reese's expression shifted, respect shadowed by urgency. "We'll detain them, but headquarters still wants your story." Alarms cut conversation. Pass system blared. Unscheduled drone launch detected Vector 039 ascending rapid. All personnel shelter. The demo drones were airborne. Lenya's mind mapped. Flight corridors. The drone path matched initial coordinates of her tattoo. Whoever controlled it knew the map. Reese grabbed her arm. Stay here. She rushed out with agents. Lenya followed 3 steps behind, turning into Corridor Delta rather than Alpha. She needed vantage and control node access. Hit the if you'd trace this signal, she whispered to unseen viewers, planting. Second prompt amid sprinting staff. She reached control substation, swiped into console. Code cascade lit screens. She bypassed admin lockouts, seized a telemetry feed. The rogue drone carried a lethal payload explosively formed penetrator, disguised as survey pod. Course angled toward dignitary arrival helipad, Lenya's fingers. Flew, years since cockpit, but code was language her muscles still spoke. She injected counter commands encoded in the tattoo's fractal algorithm. Drone resisted. Remote pilot fought. Sweat beaded along her brow. Collision clock. 60 seconds. She rerouted power. Forced servo glitch. Pivoted drone 90 degrees. Pilot compensated. 50 seconds. She deployed the map's dead zone pattern. Coordinates where GPS resolves ambiguously. Due to polar ionization here, emulated with spoof packets. Drone's nav AI surrendered to contradiction. Defaulted to hover safe mode 8 meters above ground. But payload could detonate on failsafe. Lenya initiated magnetron burst from facility. Radar overloading detonator's receiver. 20 seconds. Circuit fried. Drone spiraled down, skidding across training range. Erupting in harmless smoke. Silence lasted a breath before radios erupted in cheers. Confusion. Lenya sagged against console, adrenaline ebbing. Then steel snapped. Behind her. The bearded agent stepped from shadow, pistol leveled. Hands up, Ms. Vogt. Step away. His eyes burned accusation and fear. You compromised national assets, he growled. By authority of Arisa's voice cut in from hallway, urgent. Stand down, Agent Cole, she just saved us. Cole didn't flinch. Orders changed. She's to be secured for transport immediately. Lenya raised palms slowly. Call your superior. I just did. He thumbed safety off. They said shoot if she resists. Red laser dots blossomed across walls as backup units aimed through door glass. One settled on Lenya's sternum. Type ready if you're on standby. The targeting laser pulsed brighter. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. The floodlights failed as Lenya Vogt dangled from the rappel line, 30 feet above a burning fuselage that no longer played by training rules. A roar of diesel-fed flame rolled across the gutted mock-up, licking at her boots while wind tore sparks into constellations. Inside the wreck, overheated hydraulics popped like rifle shots. Men below froze, momentarily dazzled, then scrambled when a second explosion perforated the night with liquid light. Lenya tightened her grip, feeling the Kevlar rope creak as the sudden heat thinned its protective sheathing. Memory cataloged tensile strength curves. Her pulse stayed even. She exhaled, small and controlled. Smoke needled her eyes yet left them clear. If the cable failed, she would tuck, roll, and come up in the crouch father drilled into her bones. He had called it gravity etiquette, the only curt courtesy a sniper ever offered physics. Mother had practiced the same, but with scalpels and sprint stretcher drags through jungle mud. Their ghosts trained her still, invisible but iron-voiced. Below her, Instructor Del Toro, a barrel-chested former parascuman, shouted orders into a headset. His words fractured over the roar. Repeat, ignition's gone live, all trainees. Hold position, Lenya's thigh radio crackled back. She tapped once on transmit, a silent status. their code for "calm down, I'm fine." The line answered with a harried acknowledgement. Del Toro trusted her without thinking. They all did, despite the paperwork listing her merely as logistics specialist. Grade 3. It was an inside joke. How many logistics specialists could field strip a gas-operated rifle blindfolded and recalibrate a stabilized gimbal in 40 seconds flat? Lenya adjusted her descent rig, boots brushing superheated metal. She needed 5 more meters before she could pass the breached cabin window and reach the trapped trainee. Earlier, the scenario had been simple. Simulated fuselage crash, smoke. Grenades, evac drill. Then an electrical surge of suspicious origin had sparked a real fuel leak. Now they had an inferno. She scanned the perimeter. Backup extinguishers rolled on carts, but the chemical compound foaming from them hissed uselessly. Someone had substituted a wrong suppressant class in error too, specific to be accidental. Lenya's gaze snapped to the watchtower beyond the yard, silhouetted atop the corrugated roof. A lone observer raised binoculars. Not one of theirs. The shape was wrong, the stance predatory rather than puzzled. Wind shifted. Her nostrils tasted industrial solvent. Not facility stock either. Someone had planned tonight. Her core chilled even as fire licked nearer. Cascade risk. 40 trainees, multiple fuel cells, and a drone exhibition scheduled at dawn with dignitaries inbound. If sabotage continued to hiss on her headset, vote, control panel gone. Manual override only, advise. Del Toro's voice clipped. But fraying, Lenya assessed. Manual meant scaling inside the furnace. She swallowed heat. Proceeding, she answered, dropping the final meters. Boot soles sizzled on alloy decking. Instant intel triaged. Floor integrity, exhaust vectors, heartbeat of the pinned trainee audible over flames. She crouched and sliced through the cockpit. Door with a compact plasma torch she wore like jewelry. The trainee Callahan, 22, ex-Coast Guard, was wedged beneath a collapsed seat frame. Face streaked with soot, eyes wide, breathing ragged. "Do not move," she instructed, voice calm. She pried the frame with a lever bar, torque perfect. Metal groaned, releasing Callahan but also a spray of embers. Lenya shoved him toward the emergency chute, shoved an extinguisher pack into his hands. He balked. "Your logistics. I've logged a few overtime hours," she said dryly. "Go." Callahan vanished down the chute. Lenya pivoted to the manual. Override panel now glowing orange. She keyed a sequence no one had taught her here. The vents screamed open, sucking flame into ducts that led harmlessly skyward. Oxygen influx threatened the backdraft. She timed the next input to vent slower. Scorch lines blackened her sleeves. Enough. She turned and dove for the chute as the compartment. Flash dot she landed hard in the gravel run out. Rolled to dissipate momentum, stood. The fuselage buckled but held. Overhead sprinklers finally. Engage, showering steam. Sirens chased night birds from the perimeter. Trainees gaped between coughs. Del Toro jogged over, helmet askew, staring as if she'd grown second limbs. "How did you?" Lenya brushed residue from her tattooed forearm. Black ink spiraled along tendons in geometric whirls. An artist's abstraction, apparently. In the dim red of emergency lamps, however, the pattern seemed to glow faintly, an illusion of reflected flame. "Lucky timing," she offered. Del Toro frowned, unconvinced. Nearby, the observer on the tower lowered binoculars and spoke into a handset. Then he vanished behind the parapet. Hours later, the training yard was cordoned with yellow tape as maintenance crews combed wiring trunks for sabotage evidence. Lenya sat on a loading crate, methodically cleaning her respirator valves. The compound cafeteria served midnight rations from coolers. She ignored them, sipping electrolyte mix instead. Muscle memory had her stripping, inspecting, and reassembling gear in ritual order. Filters, seals, buckle tension. Everyday competence, comforting as heartbeat. The men passing by offered nods of respect tempered by unease. They'd seen something tonight they could not name. "You should see Medic," Callahan ventured, approaching. His voice rasped with smoke damage. She shook her head. "Already cleared." Indeed, Dr. Malik had scanned her lungs, found only micro-irritation. Years of breath control training hardened alveoli, father claimed. Scientifically dubious, but so far true. Callahan glanced at her forearm. That tattoo looked brighter in the firelight. His curiosity bordered on wary. Lenya flexed her wrist. Ink lines shimmered as skin moved. Optical illusion. High contrast lighting tricks the eye. He accepted the explanation outwardly, but doubt lingered. He started to speak again when another voice cut in. "Mind if I borrow Ms. Vogt?" "Major Alexis." Reese strode up, civilian dress shirt offset by a military-grade gaze. Naval Intelligence Liaison, new to the facility this quarter. Rumors said she specialized in pattern analysis. Callahan saluted instinctively, though protocol didn't require it. Reese returned a brief nod, waited until he left, then faced Lenya with a thin smile. "Impressive work. You saved tonight's class from a PR disaster and maybe worse." Reese's gaze flicked to the cleaning kit. "But I doubt that's why you're here at Vector Shield, is it?" Lenya continued her maintenance, silence its own answer. Reese produced a tablet, swiped. "Your personnel file is thin. Logistics suts, supply chain audits. No combat quals, yet you moved through that inferno like you'd rehearsed every spark." "Field experience," Lenya said evenly. "Field? Where?" "Your last recorded posting was a humanitarian depot in Jordan." Reese zoomed into an image. Lenya unloading crates. Her forearm tattoo visible even then. "Logistics is everywhere," Lenya replied. Snapping her kit shut. Reese tapped again. A new image. A satellite capture of polar stratosphere flight corridors. Classified overlays. She divided the screen. On the right, Lenya's tattoo. Pattern matching algorithm pulsed green. "Some ink," Reese said softly, "is more than decoration." Lenya's heart rate stayed calm by force of will. Coincidence? "The world is full of fractals." Reese pocketed the tablet. "Tonight's vent sequence, that keypad accepted a code known only to black-level pilots." "Care to explain?" Lenya stood, met Reese's eyes. "Only that when a cockpit's on fire, the universe permits shortcuts." Reese's smile thinned. "Shortcut yourself to briefing room C at 080. Oh, bring that tattoo." She turned away, already dialing her phone. Lenya watched her depart, noting light stride, confidence. Not a threat yet, but an accelerant. Dormitory wing, 0210 hours. Lenya's shared room lay dark. Bunkmate absent, summoned to security debrief. She unlocked her footlocker, withdrew a weather-sealed notebook thinner than a passport. Inside lay microfilm shards and coded lot-long sequences. Remnants of routes once flown through radar wreaths above conflict zones. She traced the ink on her arm, remembering chill cockpits, aurora borealis shimmering under wings. Memory manifested as scent, aluminum, ozone, her breath-frosting visor glass. Father's voice resurfaced. "Remember, Lenya, every map is a story, and stories want to speak. Keep yours secret until needed. Tonight, perhaps. Needed." A discreet buzz from her cumpatch. An encrypted channel she'd buried in firmware. Only one contact possessed the key calcine crux. She unfolded the patch into earpiece mode. Fuselage's skin, spraying molten rivets across the tarmac. The concussion rippled upward through Lenya Vogg's harness, a percussion she felt in bone more than ear. Training or not, the wreck was now a cauldron of genuine hazard, and the men, still scrambling below, were seconds from becoming char. She exhaled, throttling adrenaline into focus, and loosened the brake hand just enough to free fall 2 meters. Heat rose like a living wall. leather gloves smoked. Her boots clipped the empennage, bounced, then found purchase on a bent spar. Beneath her, an instructor cursed as a coolant line ruptured, disgorging scalding mist that cloaked the scene in hissing white. A trainee stumbled into that vapor. He was 19 at most, freshly discharged infantry, eyeing private security money to pay for his sister's college. His name tag read Rivera. He had no breathing gear. Lenya's heart kicked once, then steadied. She pivoted on the spar, rapped the rappel rope around her hip for a one-handed break, and dropped the final 10 feet in a practiced arc that landed her between Flame and Rookie. "Mask up!" she shouted, ripping spare filtration from her thigh pocket. Rivera fumbled, eyes wide, until she jammed the mask over his face and clamped the elastic herself. Plastic whined as it sealed. Rivera's next breath didn't boil his lungs, and the panic receded from his gaze just enough for orders to register. "Back to ladder 3, she said, voice low to cut through chaos. "Grab the halon and sweep the portside nacelle. Short bursts. 2 seconds each. Go." He nodded, bolted, half coughing through residual fumes. Lenya turned to the ruptured coolant line, a steel serpent thrashing under 500 psi. She traced the feed to a shut-off manifold, already glowing cherry. No wrench would hold. Fire foam hissed somewhere behind her, Rivera making good on instructions. Competence bloomed, even in the young. Lenya unclipped a carbide rescue saw from her harness. 24 seconds remained before the line torqued, free entirely, and shot superheated glycol across the pad. She locked the blade guard, stepped into stance, and slashed through the aluminum tie bracket anchoring the hose. 2 sparks. A dull clang. The line dropped away, pressure venting into the dirt where it couldn't atomize into lethal vapor. Only then did the sirens finally sound, late, discordant, and proof that the compound's safety net had shredded. Lenya keyed her headset. Static. She toggled channels, found everyone drowned by a broadband screech. Jamming? Here. Her pulse ticked up. The Vector Shield training facility was miles from any urban center, a self-contained enclave with redundancies stacked upon redundancies. Comm's blackout implied intent. She pivoted, scanning. Beyond the burning mock-up, the floodlight masts that ringed the yard sputtered at half lumens, powered by a tertiary generator that could, in theory, run for days. But theory hadn't stopped the blackout. Shadows cavorted at the fence line. A dozen silhouettes, maybe more. Too orderly for panic, too slow for evac. Observers, trainees continued to scatter until duty corralled instinct. Fire teams formed crude perimeters around the blaze, hoses snaking like arterial lines. Lenya kept moving, her mind running parallel calculations, coolant temperature curves, evacuation vectors, the unnerving cadence of that jamming signal. A second, quieter metric underpinned it all, the rhythm of her own breathing, syncopated. In fours like the lulls between sniper heartbeats, her father had taught her to read. Wind shifted. Flames bent sideways. An unspent fuel bladder inside the fuselage ignited with a thunderclap, launching the forward section skyward in a dragon's belch of orange and cobalt. Fragmentation arced outward, metal shards catching sparks like meteor. Tails, one piece sheared through a floodlight mast. The yard plunged into gloom. Darkness cut in every direction now, save for the inferno's own radiance. Lenya's pupils widened instantly, another inherited trick, honed by late-night studies at her mother's drafting table, where candlelight was the only budgeted luxury. Edges sharpened in her mind, vectors overlaying reality like a CAD schema. She could see paths. She chose the most efficient, a diagonal sprint to a command cache buried beneath the tarmac. The compound archivists called it Node 3, populated by encrypted flight data and emergency beacons. No trainee knew its exact coordinates. Lenya did. She slapped her wristwatch's bezel twice to display a satellite grid. A blue pin blinked. Where Node 3 should be, 40 meters, she ran. Boot soles slapped wet concrete, each stride calibrated for traction. Halfway there, a voice stopped her. Vote. It was Captain Harris, range safety officer, face glistening with soot and disbelief. His sidearm was drawn but shook. Whole bloody arrays down, he said. Generators won't answer. We're blind. Lenya didn't break stride. Get. Every non-essential 50 meters clear, now. Harris threw a look toward the chaos, then back at a corporal ferrying extinguishers. That's everyone, vote. Then move them faster, she replied, vaulting a toppled cone barrier. Harris swore, but he obeyed. Node 3's hatch was flush with the tarmac, a diamond plate disguised as drainage access. Lenya kneeled, traced the inset seam, and pressed a thumbprint to a hidden sensor disguised as a bolt head. The hatch hissed. Open on mag seals. She dropped inside, sealing the entry to trap stray smoke outside. Emergency LEDs painted the narrow corridor crimson. Ahead waited a coffin-tight operations bay humming on isolated power. Console screens flickered to life at her approach, unlocking to credentials mapped to a facetiously humble descriptor. Field Logistics Liaison. The title was camouflage. Beneath it lay sovereign clearance into restricted airspace telemetry. The jammed radio. Channels scrolled across her monitor, intentionally saturated by an encryption hash she recognized. Not random. Military grade, but altered in a way that reminded her of playful Sunday puzzles her mother once made her decode. A family echo. Lenya's gaze drifted to her forearm, where black inked lines of cartography curved from wrist to elbow, meridians, latitudes, a strange swirl near the cubital fossa that casual onlookers assumed was flourish. It wasn't, tonight. It pulsed in her mind like a beacon. She overlaid the hash parameters on a topographic render. Data points aligned with the tattoo's curves, exact intersections she'd memorized under candlelight as a child, but never expected to animate in real time. Someone was using her own secret map to blind the facility. Inhale. 4 counts. She traced the on-screen vectors, mapping them against electromagnetic nodes. A pattern emerged. The jamming array pivoted around a mobile transmitter positioned southwest of the range. 90 seconds ago, that sector was empty. Active threat. She keyed a silent alarm directly to the compound's internal mesh, net hard, wired, immune to radio saturation. It would flash on every smartwatch inside perimeters. White code, no siren. Subtle, orderly. A new cursor blinked on her screen. Inbound drone traffic. Small, fast, hugging terrain and RQ-21 derivative with optional weapon mounts. Its projected path intersected the training yard in 2 minutes. Vector Shield had no anti-air defense rated for live intercepts. The blazes below would provide the perfect visual cover for an insertion or strike. Either outcome spelled casualties. She needed to unmask the jamming signal to call higher command. Options scrolled across her mind. Physical sabotage of the transmitter was ideal but required time. Alternate. Piggyback a narrow band. Laser come through the compound's fiber optic emergency node directly to a relay on the North Tower, if power was intact, she queried. Tower power nominal. Lenya rolled up her sleeve. The map on her skin tilted as she flexed. Coordinates pinwheeled into alignment with the on-screen overlay. She selected 3 pathways, typed them as rapid-fire macro into the console, and compiled a mesh hop. The system whined, but accepted. She lifted a lockbox from below the console, a beacon kit with miniaturized optical transceiver. It clipped to her collar. She ascended the hatch ladder, resurfacing into night wind, now pungent with chemical fire. The yard had become an eerie amphitheater. Flames as center stage. Personnel ringed around its radius, executing fire suppression in half-lit precision. Above them all, the sky writhed with embers, and farther, higher, an approaching buzz too refined for insects. She dashed to the North Communication Tower, a skeletal ascent of C-channel steel rungs. 20 meters up, the compound emerged like circuitry etched in ember tones. She spotted Harris shepherding survivors behind a concrete barricade. Lenya strapped the laser transceiver to a mount. Fingers flew across microswitches, aligning the diode toward a civilian weather satellite with a known bounce-back handshake. She fired a test ping. Latency, 40 milliseconds. Clear. She exhaled. Type the message. Vector shield under attack. Jammer located grid, 33 Alpha. RQ-21 inbound. ATA 59 sec. Request override C2. Message dispatch. She looked up. The drone now visible. A dark lozenge slicing across stars, no nav lights. She estimated. Final approach altitude, 120 meters. Payload unknown. One rifle could solve this, but only if a shooter could read wind shear off the fire column. She pictured her father perched on a ridge, teaching her to bracket gusts by the way cotton grass. Bowed. She felt the wind tug her braid, the same angle, same velocity. A trainee on the tower's catwalk, Corporal Jine, held an M4 with iron sights, useless past 300 meters. Lenya approached. Mind if I borrow that? Jine hesitated. Her braid and soot-blacked face belied rank, but her eyes communicated certainty. He surrendered the weapon. Then the jamming hash warbled, mutated, and new cursors appeared. 3 more drones entering the valley. Lenya's watch pulsed. Satellite reply. Override granted. Protocol Falcon. Standby for direct link. She barely had time to parse the words. Before a siren she'd never heard inside the compound keened from buried speakers. Under her skin, the tattoo warmed a phantom sensation, like ink aware of being read. Droppeth, if you've ever had to prove yourself twice as hard as anyone else. Floodlights resurrected at full brilliance, bathing the range in hospital white. Glare. Somewhere tertiary power had been hijacked by override. Speakers barked. All call signs, stand by for remote flight path injection. Lenya squinted at the drones now illuminated silver against night. They adjusted heading mid-air, veering away from the yard. Her satellite bounce had reached command, and command had seized their navigation. Relief threatened to weaken her knees. She forced discipline. Crisis not over. Enemy jammer still active. Unknown hostiles at perimeter. Below. Harris waved frantically. She descended. Midway down, her watch vibrated again, this time with a code she'd only seen once, at a black site. Briefing. Trace SIGM A0. That meant one thing. Someone inside the compound was transmitting the jammer. Her boots hit dirt. Harris approached, carrying a tablet mapping live personnel positions. Tiny blue dots speckled the compound. One dot pulsed red at the motor pool. Lenya ran. She crossed gravel yards, where suppressive hoses still doused metal bones of the wreck. Sparks hissed on her fatigues. In her peripheral, she saw Rivera assisting Medic's child already grown by fire. Motor pool smelled of diesel and ozone. Shadows moved between armored SUVs. Lenya unholstered her sidearm, thumbed the safety off. The jammer's frequency screech grew louder, felt rather than heard. Drilling behind her eyes, she followed it to a Humvee hood propped open. Inside, a field expedient transceiver melded to the engine block heat sink disguise. Cables snaked to a rugged tablet strapped to the grill. Footsteps behind her. She spun. It was Specialist Deke Marshall, electronics instructor, smirk permanently etched into stubble. He held a remote switch. Hell of a night, girl, he drawled, thumb brushing the switch cap. Lenya's stance widened. Shut it down, Deke. Everyone walks away, he chuckled. That map on your arm, it's worth 9 digits to certain bidders. Tonight's just the demo reel. His thumb pressed. Nothing until the Humvee's engine growled, transceiver spiking. Marshall's eyes widened. That wasn't. Lenya shot the tablet. A crack of glass, a puff of ozone. The jammer screech vanished. Marshall lunged. They collided against the grill. She smelled cheap bourbon on his breath. His elbow found her ribs, hers found his throat. He folded, gasping. Lenya pinned him, wrenching his wrists and zip, tying them with cord from her belt. Sirens crescendoed anew, this time law enforcement approaching from the main highway. Command's override had rerouted local responders. Lenya looked down at the transceiver. A miniature sat phone blinked error, but alongside the shattered tablet sat Marshall's backup, a storage drive the size of a lighter. She pocketed it. Marshall wheezed. "You'll never get ahead of this, Ink Girl. They'll hunt you." She leaned in. "Let them try. Drapa, if you believe every scar tells a story." Blue strobes flashed through the compound gate as state troopers and federal sedans poured in. Harris hurried toward her, relief warring with suspicion when he saw Marshall bound. "Command wants you on a secure line," he said. "Now." Lenya followed him to the admin bunker. Along the walk, she noticed silence where flames once roared. Yards subdued, embers dying under halon foam. Yet tension coiled tighter. Troopers cordoned zones, photographing debris. Inside the bunker, a red phone waited under a plastic hood. Lenya lifted it. "Vote," she said. A voice she recognized as Brigadier General Sloan answered. He'd once shaken her hand at a joint exercise, oblivious then to her ink's importance. Tonight, his tone was different. "Agent vote, asset integrity compromised. Package Echo requests extraction. Coordinates match your tattoo. Confirm readiness." Lenya's throat tightened. Package Echo was legend, rumored to be a supersonic demonstrator too advanced for satellites to catch. And its flight path mirrored the lattice on her arm. "Ready," she said. "Rendition team inbound 60 mics. Secure drive. Maintain isolation. Do not trust local command. Repeat, do not trust local command." Click. Lenya hung up, aware of Harris watching her. She slipped the drive deeper into a hidden pocket and stepped outside. The night smelled of cooling metal and betrayal. Overhead, the first stars re-emerged as smoke thinned unblinking watchers to secrets too bright for daylight. In 20 minutes, dawn would tint the horizon. By then she'd be gone, pulled into the classified flight. Map etched beneath her skin. Yet as she turned toward the vehicle bay, a fresh siren wailed, distinct from all previous alarms. Every trooper raised rifles toward the eastern access road, where headlights approached without clearance. Lenya froze, heart sinking the sniper breath once more. The convoy cresting the ridge bore no government markings, just matte black windows. "Opaque," she whispered. "Not extraction, not yet." The leading truck's back doors swung open mid-roll, revealing a launcher rack priming, and that was when the compound floodlights died a second time. "Drapa, if you're still with me, things are about to ignite." Live tide, scorching the hairs on her forearms, as Lenya landed beside the first unconscious trainee. She dropped to a knee on blistering metal, slashed his harness free, and felt for a pulse that stuttered like bad radio. No ambulance crew would breach the cordon in time. She had 2 minutes, maybe less, before the oxygen tanks collapsed into fireballs. A quick double tap on her headset switched channels. "Vector Shield Command, vote speaking role evac rotor, or you'll be stacking body bags." Static hissed instead of words. The compound's cum tower, silhouetted against the amber dusk, had been severed at mid-mast by the earlier explosion, cables dangling like exposed veins. Of course it had. She scanned for alternatives while stripping off her repelling gloves. Foam extinguishers, spent. Backup radios? Buried in the smoldering instructor kiosk. That left the field medic's trauma beacon locked inside the infirmary, 100 yards across open tarmac, riddled with debris. She hoisted the trainee, a lanky kid too new to own the calluses of the job, and firemen carried him toward the nearest barricade. Flames marched after them, chewing trail lines of spilled kerosene. Her boots slapped through puddles of aviation fuel that shimmered iridescent under emergency STROB ease. Behind. A loud crack signaled the fuselage's starboard wing giving way. She didn't turn. Instead, she laid the trainee against a stack of sandbags, tilted his chin, and began two-finger compressions timed with the basal beat she could hardly feel. During the third pulse, an errant gust blew her jacket hem high enough for the world, or rather the overhead security drone, to glimpse the intricate ink sprawling across her lower back. Hyperfine lines formed a constellation of arcs, nodes, and cryptic coordinates. The tattoo had always been a secret caged by clothing and caution. Now a micro-gimbal camera caught the flash and streamed it, unfiltered, to the command bunker. Inside that bunker, Intelligence Lieutenant Arlen Cade nearly spilled his coffee. He zoomed the video. The pattern matched a red tier flight corridor map, stamped classified in a 50-year-old file. A route flown only by ghost aircraft whose paperwork had never been declassified. His pulse spiked. Who the hell was this woman really? Cade toggled the base, wide klaxon. Lockdown, condition cobalt. All operators to muster points. Detain subject. V-46 immediately. On the tarmac, Lenya felt rather than heard the compound's bulkhead gates slam shut. Floodlights snapped from amber to surgical white, bathing every soldier in stark definition. She finished the compressions, shoved 2 ampules of epinephrine into the trainee's thigh, and finally registered the sudden hush. No sirens, no barked orders, only the crackle of fire and the distant whine of hydraulic sealing blast doors. Her instincts murmured, "Not good." A squad of security troopers broke from the administration block, rifles shouldered, helmets glinting. Their sprint vector said they weren't headed to fight the blaze. They were converging on her. Lenya retrieved her rescue shears and clipped the trainee's dog tag loop, threading it into his palm. "Hold this when you wake up," she whispered, then stood, rolling tense shoulders. The squad leader, Sergeant Oropeza, halted 10 paces out. "Operator vote," he called, voice amplified through a throat mic. "Drop all tools and step forward." She offered him a withering look. "I've got 3 more men inside that wreck. They don't have 10 minutes. Orders are orders. Step forward." A second explosion rocked the mock fuselage. Fire geysered through the roof. Screams cut short within. Lenya's jaw flexed. The squad's rifles didn't waver. Oropeza's gaze flicked to the tattoo, now partially revealed beneath her soot-streaked shirt. He swallowed. The intel channel must be howling in his ear. Lenya unclipped her harness buckle with deliberate slowness. The metal thunk on the ground echoed like a gavel. "Fine, I'll comply," she said, hands rising. But her left hand rose faster. In one fluid motion, she flicked a forearm blade from her sleeve seam, slender ceramic dagger invisible to metal detectors. She snapped it, frisbee spinning. Not at Oropeza, but at the punctured fire extinguisher drum 15 meters behind the squad. The blade hit the pressure gauge. A volcanic plume of foam detonated outward, engulfing half the soldiers in icy white sludge. Lenya pivoted, sprinted toward the burning fuselage. Bullets cracked past live rounds this time. She dove through the open cargo hatch, rolling across molten decking that scorched her elbows. The roar inside was hell's own choir. She toggled her wrist light. Flames roared overhead, but the cargo bay's center aisle remained a brief corridor of survivable heat. 2 trainees lay pinned beneath collapsed seat frames. Their groans framed her next move. She needed leverage. A carbon fiber support beam was snapped nearby. She wedged its forked end beneath the seat frame, braced a foot against the wall, and heaved. Muscles carved by a lifetime of silent conditioning engaged. Like winches. The beam creaked, metal warped, and the first trainee wriggled free. "On your feet," she barked, handing him a half-melted helmet. "Cover your mouth, stay low. Follow my boots." To the second trainee, she offered a harsher directive. "You breathe when I count, copy?" His panicked nod sufficed. She hooked both arms under his shoulders and began a brutal drag. Each meter felt stolen from the devil. A fresh burst of flame curled along the ceiling, chasing oxygen. Lenya timed the ripple, then shoved both men toward the hatch and tumbled after. Outside, foam still drifted like winter. The soldiers regrouped, eyes stinging, rifles up. Lenya placed the trainees behind a flipped forklift for cover. The forklift's propane tank hissed ominously, but for now it served as shield. She turned, hands empty, stance ready. "Sergeant, I've got no quarrel. Let me secure medical evac and we talk after." Oropeza's jaw ticked. "Hire says you're a national security anomaly." Lenya actually laughed short, humorless. "Because of a tattoo." Overhead, the security drone zoomed back in, broadcasting her ink leave into more than one clandestine viewing room. Audience prompt flashed across her peripheral. A HUD overlay an internal motivator she'd coded ages ago as mental discipline. "Drop a, if you think she'll hold her nerve." Back in reality, Oropeza advanced. "Kneel, now." She opened her hands, palms outward. "All right." She sank to one knee, then pressed her right thumb against the forklift's emergency release valve. Compressed propane vented with a piercing screech, forming a rolling cloud between her and the squad. She lunged sideways, snagging a fallen rifle, and barrel rolled underneath the chaotic white fog. Thermal optics would be useless in the gas plume. She needed distance 30 yards to the infirmary. The compound's loudspeakers crackled to life with Cade's voice. "Operator vote. Surrender. Your next step could trigger lethal force." Pity, she thought, because my next step's already mid-air. She vaulted a barricade, boots hitting pavement in stride. Bullets whizzed, but none found range through the opaque cloud. She darted under the wing of a grounded tiltrotor, slapped the access panel, and climbed the wheel strut into the cargo bay. Inside, emergency lanterns glowed dim red. The Bird's auxiliary batteries were on standby queue for a fast startup if someone bypassed the cockpit lockout. Someone like her. She slid into the pilot's seat, fingers dancing across dark glass. Years at her mother's side, Colonel Vogt, legendary medevac pilot, had left muscle memory for these systems. Booting the APU would broadcast her location, but she needed med lift, not stealth. A siren shifted pitch. The security drone now hovered at canopy level, optical modules whirring. Lenya's tattoo pulsed beneath her shirt as if a live warning. Her that the world's gaze had tightened. She keyed the external speakers. Clear the rotor path or lose limbs. Oropeza's squad hesitated, standard fear of chop. She seized the window, spooling turbines. The tiltrotor shuddered as blades found bite. Heat haze rippled down the tarmac. Muzzle flashes stitched the air. Rounds clanged against fuselage. She ignored them, eyes scanning gauges. 90% RPM good, enough. She feathered nacelles forward. The aircraft lurched, then began a short roll, wheels thumping over debris. An old fire truck loomed dead ahead, blocking taxi. Lenya yanked collective, skipping the Bird into a hover. Wind from the rotors hammered the fire truck, tipping it just enough to slide aside. She nosed forward. A new voice cut through the cool, officious, and unmistakably intelligence branch. "Vector Shield Airframe 7-2, you are ordered to land immediately. Flight plan unauthorized. Stand by for intercept." She muted them, broadcasting instead to base medics. "Prepare to load 2 priority casualties at Pad Bravo. You've got 90 seconds. The flight deck loomed, lit by surge lamps and the frantic waves of a lone corpsman who clearly had not received Cade's memo. Lenya dropped the rear ramp mid-hover. The downdraft flattened his fatigues as he wheeled the first gurney aboard. Meanwhile, the drone had switched to bright green target lasers that danced across her canopy, range-finding. Somewhere a marksman with an anti-materiel rifle prepped a shot. Audience prompt pulsed in her subconscious. Comment if you've ever watched Calm Conquer Chaos. She scanned the horizon. No intercept craft yet, but the compound's western. Gate opened to spill a Mac Black Interceptor Jeep, mounting a roof rack launcher. Missile? To gun? Either would clip a rotor in seconds. She clipped the gurney straps, shouted to the corpsman. 30 seconds. Then punched the nav computer, importing a terrain following program, one she'd memorized from clandestine files her father once guarded. The route traced eerily with the tattoo etched across her skin dot as the second casualty was loaded. Lenya's cockpit alarm chirped missile lock. A painted green diamond flashed across the HUD. Hold on, she hissed, slamming the ramp. She shoved throttles. The tiltrotor lurched skyward, clearing the deck fence by inches. Below, the Jeep's launcher burped smoke. A surface-to-air rocket arced toward her tail. She banked hard left, dipping under a power line, rotor tips sparking harmlessly against the static wires. The missile corrected dot in the back, the corpsman swore. The casualties moaned. Leny kicked rudder, inverted nacelles to airplane mode, and shot past the compound's perimeter lights into open night. The missile closed, blistering hot on countermeasure sensors. She pulled a torch flare handle. Magnesium. Flares spat from the tail. The missile bit, exploding in a white blossom that rattled the airframe. She breathed once, then the master caution erupted anew. Multiple radar pings, high-angle climb vector. Intercept fighters? No, impossible here. But she recognized the signature, drone swarm. Tiny dots materialized against the stars. Vectors converging. Cade's voice returned, colder. You're escaping with classified intel. Last warning. She gritted her teeth. This intel is literally burned into me. Shoot me down and you lose it forever. No reply. An inner thought. Dad, you said there'd be days like this. Lights on the panel. Dimmed fuel line damaged from small arms hits. She'd have 20 minutes of flight tops. She adjusted course toward a canyon system, 30 kilometers west, terrain low enough to hide from ground radars. The tattoo's map lines shimmered in her memory, aligning her route by instinct. Yet, as she neared the first ridge, a sudden beam of green lanced from below laser designator, far more precise than the earlier drone. It danced on her forward window, pulsing steady, tracking her heartbeats. She banked, but the beam clung. CAF countermeasures wouldn't disrupt the solid-state designator. They were painting her for something bigger, an orbital strike drone rumored. In classified circles, capable of tungsten rod kinetic shots. If that rod fell, everything beneath, including a civilian township, would be glassed. She swallowed hard. New plan. Force Cade's hand. She keyed the open channel. Vector shield command. This is Vote. If you target me, you target Blue Haven Township at Grid 14 Alpha. Your call. Silence. Then, a low growl of distant jet engine scramjets confirmed her fear. The orbital drone's Shepard vehicle had launched. She nosed the tiltrotor toward the canyon mouth. The beam tracked. Sweat prickled. Just as she cleared the first ridge, a thunderous crack split the sky. A white contrail stabbed earthward far behind her orbital slug outbound. She glimpsed impact flash in the wing mirror. But it wasn't on her. The kinetic rod hit the compound itself, obliterating the admin block in a plume of incandescent dust. Cade had chosen self-destruct over compromise. The shockwave chased her like a tsunami of air. The tiltrotor bucked, warning klaxons shrieking. And for a heartbeat, she thought the tail severed. Panels rattled. Casualties screamed, and the cockpit canopy fractured like spiderweb glass. And in that endless second, Lenya realized the beam still. Painted her nose, meaning the orbital system allotted a second rod. She whispered, "Not tonight," and punched a forbidden switch, the manual override for nacelle separation, a feature never meant for flight. The rotor pods blew outward on explosive bolts, whipping away like giant boomerangs while microjets along the fuselage engaged, morphing the craft into a stubby scramglider. Weight dropped. G-forces hammered, and the craft plunged into the canyon's throat, skimming mere meters above river froth in a scream of vapor trails. Above, the beam sliced air. Uselessly. Hunting pods that no longer carried her. Cliffhanger inhaled with the canyon wind as Lenya's glitch-burn machine corkscrewed into darkness. Alarms howling fatal altitude. Fuel zero. Swarm drones descending like metal locusts. Would wings fold or skeletons? The question hung unanswered in the night. Link, Vector Shield Command, this is Vote. Her voice stayed low, steady. We have live casualties, chemical fire, and an unidentified incursion. I need clearance to divert the grid and route evac helicopters through Sector 7. Static. Answered. Then a man's baritone broke across the channel, strangely cool. Almost curious. Sector 7 is restricted. Operator Vote. Lenya's brow tightened. No one used her last name on internal comms. Copy, but restricted airspace saves lives. Do I have it or not? A pause, deliberate. Negative. Maintain current perimeter. Extraction assets are already inbound. Already? She glanced at the orange dome reflecting in her visor and made a silent calculation. Instructions versus mortal seconds. The old sniper rule, the greater wind chose clarity over obedience, echoed in her chest. She severed the channel. The first trainee wheezed, coughing blackened phlegm. Lenya adjusted the improvised oxygen mask fashioned from her own filtration gear. She scanned the fuselage doorway where two more silhouettes sprawled across hot decking. Every breath scalded her lungs, but her pulse thrummed an even metronome. A childhood echo flashed her mother's hands braced on a mass casualty patient, barking vital statistics while syringes rattled around a helicopter cabin. That image calibrated Lenya's resolve like the feel of a zeroed scope. She hauled the unconscious trainee over her shoulder and sprinted for the exterior blast wall. Across the tarmac, a private security squad men in crisp charcoal, fatigues with no unit patch fanned into a cordon. Their weapons pointed not into the smoke but outward, away from the blaze, toward the broad concrete apron that separated training structures from operations hangars. That something was deeply off. Lenya ducked behind an overturned fire barrel. Laid. The casualty on cooler pavement. And keyed her mic again, but on a buried emergency frequency only 3 instructors knew existed. Prodigy Net. This is Phantom. If you monitor, break silence. We have unauthorized boots inside the wire. Repeat. Hostile presence or blue on blue? The answer came from a woman's breathless whisper. Phantom, Mother Hen, your ping lit the line. We see them on cameras, no. IFF, no transport path recorded. Mother Hen was Ruhi Desai, the compound's lean systems engineer who built more code tripwires than the Pentagon. If Ruhi sounded rattled, the threat was real. Lenya angled a look past the barrel. One security contractor, a tall man with a hawk nose, gestured toward her location, issuing wordless commands. The muzzle of his carbine tracked ready. She pressed. A hand to the slick latex of her forearm sleeve, feeling the faint rise of tattooed ridgelines beneath. The inked maze had always been a souvenir, at least, that's what she told them. But last night, Ruhi ran the lines through a topography engine, just for fun, and whistled low when a classified satellite path unfolded between the shapes. Now those men wanted proof, the map, and whoever wore it. She checked the trainees. Pulse again stable enough for 3 minutes alone. Her breath slowed, plotting angles. The north perimeter held a redundant power junction. If she could melt the locking servo with an arc flash, that would blind the unknown squad's optics long enough to slip casualties behind the hardened medic bunker. Mother Hen, spin up Junction 12's manual override. I need blackout in 30 seconds. Negative, Ruhi breathed. Command locked me out after your first transmission. They're running shadow protocols. If I cut power, the failsafes trigger electromagnetic barriers, no one in or out. Lenya's teeth flashed. Whoever orchestrated this wanted isolation. She stared at the expanding fireball chewing through the mock fuselage, ticking billboard of distraction. The enemy's eyes faced the flames. None tracked the narrow maintenance trench to the weapons vault. Then we pivot, she said. I'll fetch a suppressant drone from the vault. Use diagnostic pulses to spoof vault door logs every 3 seconds. They'll think the hinge sensors are glitching. Copy, on my mark. A low boom rattled the oxygen tanks in the Inferno One, ruptured, rocketing skyward like silver shrapnel. Embers cascaded over the security cordon, causing momentary chaos. Lenya sprinted, boots hammering painted lines, and slid into the trench. Mouth as steel splinters hissed overhead. The trench smelled of ozone and hydraulic oil. Emergency lights pulsed blood, red. She vaulted a toolbox, hooked left, and slapped her palm to a biometric pad camouflaged behind conduit. Access denied, of course. She closed her eyes, inhaling. Her father's voice calm at the shooting range echoed. Focus on the thing that matters, ignore the thing that doesn't. She centered her pulse, then punched a code string she wasn't supposed to know, an old diagnostic backdoor she'd found during a midnight audit. The door clacked open, inside. Rows of micro-drones nested like black swallowtails on rails. Lenya selected one the size of a soda can Triad 7, capable of discharging 40 liters of aerosol suppressant or near-silent recon flight. She thumbed the launch switch, and the drone unfolded. A seconds-long boot-up word while. She sensed her wrist display. Word count, 1,220. Drop 'em. If you've ever been underestimated. She guided the drone through the trench vent and into open air. Its thermal optics painted the scene. 4 contractors spread in a skirmish line, another pair flanking toward Ruhu's server annex. They carried non-standard rifles, likely caseless subsonics used by deniable units. Lenya flagged each signature on her HUD, then pivoted toward the med bunker corridor. She retrieved the unconscious trainee, hefting his limp weight, and hustled to the bunker's hydraulic lift. Card reader error flashed red. She tried her instructor badge. Error again. They were sealing medical assets. That meant they expected casualties and planned to control who lived. Lenya propped the casualty against the bulkhead and pried open a floor hatch, revealing the manual lift cylinder. She bled pressure from its primary valve. The platform sank with a groan. Once the gap widened a few centimeters, she wedged a pry bar under the decking, cranked until the opening gaped like a stone sarcophagus, and lowered the trainee inside. She descended after him, shoulders brushing cold bulkhead. Sub-level lights flickered, untouched by the system lockdown. Rows of trauma stretchers and portable vents waited in neat order. She sealed the hatch above. Engaging a manual doglock, the trainee's eyelids fluttered. Smoke-blackened tears streaked his cheek. Thanks. Easy, she murmured. Name? Rex, Cadet Rex Pollard. Rex, you're safe here. Stay low. Fresh air cycling from the sub-circuit. He nodded, drifting unconscious again. Footsteps clanged overhead, multiple, deliberate. Lenya killed her flashlight and pressed an ear to the hatch. Voices male, clipped. Map on her arm. Secure the target. Her pulse slowed further, converting fear into geometry. She looked at the tattoo hidden under her sleeve, an intricate swirl bridging wrist to elbow, etched in carbon silicon ink. Intel had misfiled a segment of the Southern Flight Corridor last year. She'd memorized the gap, but never reported it, trusting the secret would matter to someone else. Someday. Someday had arrived. She slipped from the sub-level, through a maintenance tube feeding directly into the operations hangar. The hangar door sat open, exposing a sleek turbofan transport call, sign Archer 1 idling in muffling hush. 4 more unmarked contractors loaded crates aboard. The crates bore symbol codes for cryogenic containment. Toxic agents? Weaponized pathogens? Her mind raced through epidemiological risk until she spotted a familiar serial. BPM-77, the regenerative fuel cell used in high-altitude drones. Rui's map overlay danced in Lenya's memory, an orbital corridor that could ferry unmanned craft across continents undetected. Those fuel cells weren't for rescue drones. They were for something that could vanish under half a meter of stratospheric ice cloud. She angled behind a support column, lowering her center of gravity the way her father taught when stalking elk at dawn. Breath through nose, roll weight from heel to toe. At a side workstation, a portable data vault pulsed blue. Lenya slid to it. The interface required a retinal scan, but she had other means. A fiber pre-tap loop gleaned from Rui's toolbox. She patched in. Data cascaded GPS coordinates, fuel burn tables, altitudes. She captured all, then ran a quick heuristic. Flight route matched her tattoo path to the meter. But 3 endpoints diverged into troposphere drop zones labeled with Latin initials, agricultural counties across her home country. Biological sabotage masquerading as disaster relief. Smash. The like if your instincts ever screamed louder than orders. Lenya yanked the fiber, slotted it into her wrist comp, and keyed a point-to-point laser burst to Rui's hidden receiver. Upload staggered across dead satellites. Rui confirmed. Voice trembling. I'll push to open channels once we're safe. Not safe yet, Lenya said. Archer 1 is fueled. They'll launch in minutes. If they get airborne, interception goes maritime, and we lose leverage. What's your plan? She watched a contractor secure the last crate with ratchet straps, then climb the ramp. I fly as their pilot, she answered. You don't have clearance codes. I have the map. She glanced at her forearm. They need me alive. Or they think they do. Rui inhaled sharply. Lenya, that's suicidal. So was breathing smoke 15 minutes ago. Lenya stepped from the shadows in a calm, measured stroll. 2 contractors pivoted, rifles raising. Easy. She lifted both hands. You need a flight navigation key. I'm the key. Hawk-nosed contractor approached. Identify. But the electromagnetic barrier. Blow it. Light the grid. If we're sealed, we stay with the devil we know. Ready? Rui's answer was a single breath. Archer 1's ramp began to lift. Lenya spread a blank acetate across the NAV table and uncapped a grease pen. Course 117 by 260. She murmured, sketching a meaningless scribble stalling for Rui. Suddenly the entire hangar plunged into darkness. Emergency strobes flashed amber. The ramp froze halfway and then slammed down under gravity. An electromagnetic barrier hissed to life. Outside, ghostly blue panes sealing the hangar mouth. Contractors shouted, weapons clattering. The pilot cursed. What the hell? Lenya rammed her pen tip into the flight control circuit reset, shorting left thrust. Alarms screeched. She rolled from her chair, elbowed Hawk-Nose's knee, and snatched his sidearm in a single spin. He fell against the bulkhead, howling. She fired a single round into the overhead electrical conduit. Sparks rained. The cockpit sealed itself in darkness. Engines flamed out. Lenya darted back into the cargo bay, weaving between crates as contractors converged. Rui's whisper bled through static. I dumped blackout logs to global net evidence. Is everywhere. Lenya slammed her shoulder into a crate latch, spilling pressurized canisters of cryogenic fuel. Fog billowed, biting her cheeks with frost. She kicked one canister toward approaching boots. A rifle bolt clicked. She dove behind a pallet. The canister ruptured, releasing a super-chilled halo that froze metal rivets. One man slipped, rifle skittering away. Lenya captured the weapon, toggled it to semi, and motioned contractors back. I don't want casualties, she said, voice low. but I will drop anyone between me and that door. Hawknose coughed, blood darkening his lips. You think you win? Whole facility's sealed. Reinforcements inbound. She kept the muzzle steady. I only need 15 minutes. For what? She pressed a keypad behind her power to the auxiliary drone cradle. Inside, a compact recon Jetta mothballed experimental called Aetherblade hummed awake. Its canopy rose like a silver petal. It's not about where you're going, she said. It's about who sees you fail. Comment ready if you can feel the tension. Hawknose lunged. Her trigger finger squeezed round, struck his shoulder. He crumpled, swearing. Lenya back stepped up the Aetherblade's ladder. The cockpit, built for sleek efficiency, smelled of vacuum-sealed semiconductors. She slid into the seat. The system recognized her biometrics, thanks to a firmware bug she'd hidden 6 months prior. Exhaust screen flared. She powered nav thrusters on internal cells, bypassing external clearance. Engines whispered. Contractors outside hammered on the canopy. She keyed the barrier door, unlock Rui's last exploit. The electromagnetic pane flickered, then dropped. The hangar mouth opened to a night sky bruised purple. She throttled to full. The jet catapulted from the hangar, wings flexing. Below, Archer 1's contractors fired after her, rounds chasing into empty sky. Wind roared. Altitude readout ticked upward. Lenya engaged the silent corridor. Her tattoo pulses glowed beneath. The flight suit, guiding instrumentation along the inked map. But outside, radar blossoms tracked. Air defense batteries considered her blip. Friend or foe? One data point still missing, the failsafe route home. The map ended where classified territory began, a blank gulf of guesswork. She inhaled. The jet breached cloud tops, stars glittering. Ground control demanded identification. She responded only with coordinates on a secure. Burst to Ruhi. Next dot on the map, the one we never decoded. Her HUD flashed red. Incoming low seek. She drew a breath, voice steady. Mother hen calculate. Blind gate in 15 seconds, or I drop off the edge. Silence. 10 seconds. 5. Her hands tightened on the throttle. The HUD changed. New vector. Flashed green. She rolled the jet and dove toward the dark. The G-force pinned her, lungs compressing. Outside, missile trails scribed white fury, overshooting. By meters, one clipped. Her outer winglet system screamed. She fought the stick, remembering her father's mantra, ride the chaos. Don't let it ride you. Altitude plummeted. Ocean shimmered jagged far below. The engine stuttered. She toggled emergency fuel. None. A single pale island beacon blinked starboard, an abandoned listening post. The jet glided, bleeding speed. She aimed at the black strip of old runway. Flaps dead. The nose dipped. Impact alarms wailed. Steel shattered. Everything went white. She dreamt of her mother binding an arterial bleed, calm as moonlight. The body always talks. Listen closely, her mother whispered. Lenya's eyes snapped open to darkness. The canopy lay cracked above. Rain hissed. She smelled jet fuel. Her arm throbbed, tattoo warm, edges sparking faint cyan. She realized why. The crash had activated piezoelectric veins in the ink. A dormant signal beacon, one she'd never known, existed now, pulsed into the night. Footsteps approached on broken asphalt. Not contractors' boots, heavier, synchronized. She reached for the pistol. Gone. A flashlight blinded her. A clipped accent spoke. Instructor Vogt, or should I say Courier Zero. He stepped into view. Navy windbreaker, adorned with insignia she half recognized but couldn't place. How did you find me? She rasped. He tapped his Combs earpiece. That tattoo, just ink? It's screaming classified telemetry across half the hemisphere. He knelt, voice softer. You crashed where we guided you. You're safe, for now. She forced breath. Who is we? Lightning strobed. Behind him, Silhouettes in advanced exosuits fanned out, scanning perimeter. On their shoulders, a stylized broken sword emblem glimmered. The man extended a gloved hand. We are the ones who laid that map under your skin long before you knew why. And tonight, instructor, the real mission finally begins. Her vision blurred, but her pulse steadied ready. The world tilted into blackout. AIM except old mentors or the dossier clerks who cataloged her classified life. But the voice on Channel 6 used it like a pass key. She kept moving, dragging the unconscious trainee toward the perimeter as the firestorm clawed higher. You're not on my comms list, she answered, forcing herself to sound merely irritated. Identify. Call me Watchman, the baritone replied. And listen carefully. The blast you witnessed was deliberate. Your site has been seeded with vapor phase incendiary compounds, tuned to ignite on infrared sweep. If the suppression towers cycle on, you'll have a chain reaction. Lanya's brain sliced the warning into actionable pieces. The training yard sprinklers were due to engage once flame sensors hit threshold. Water on a chemical like VXIR would aerosolize. It burning nerve agent, lethal in seconds. Whoever orchestrated this countered on protocol, killing the survivors. She pivoted, scanning for the maintenance kiosk that controlled auxiliary power. Then give me override codes, Watchman. Rot 6, Echo 9, Theta 3, the voice responded. But you have 70 seconds before the mainframe security demon rewrites the port. She reached the kiosk, still towing the limp trainee, and shoved the override cable into her wrist pad. Typing one-handed, she input the triad. A prompt demanded biometric confirmation. She pressed her thumb, but her print was locked from the previous emergency patch. The timer on the HUD bled down. 057, 056. Figures. She yanked a combat knife from her thigh sheath and split the glove. A nicotine-colored tattoo swirled across her left palm, delicate lines that looked abstract at first glance. She pressed the inked skin to the scanner. A green flash. Access granted. The kiosk chimed approval and rerouted the tower logic, halting the sprinkler cascade. She exhaled once, time returning from bullet speed to slogging normality. Then the voice returned lower, almost impressed. Your palm map. That was never meant for local authentication. It authenticates me wherever I'm needed, she muttered. Now I need rotor lift or ground units at grid, Echo 4. Silence. She thought the mystery operator had ghosted until footfalls sounded behind her. Two men in unmarked charcoal fatigues emerged from the smoke, rifles raised low. Their faces were blank with the kind of calm that only veteran operators carried. Yet they looked at her with unfiltered curiosity. You vote? The taller asked. She eased between them and the trainee. Define need to know. We're your ride. He jerked a thumb toward a matte black utility truck idling beyond a toppled barricade. Orders straight from Executive Shield. Lanya's gaze swept the wreck. Additional trainees cried for help deeper in the flames. My mission protocol is rescue, not retreat. The second man shook his head. If your protocol mattered, you'd already be briefed on what's inside that fuselage. This is a red-level extraction for you alone. HQ says the rest are statistical noise. Rage pulsed behind her sternum. Those are humans. There'll be casualties if you don't leave now. Her internal metronome clicked the discipline. Beaten into her by a father who could hit a coin at a kilometer, and a mother who could close an artery faster than fear. Mission factors: unknown chemical agent, compromised yard, shadow operators claiming authority. But the equation changed when she felt the trainee's pulse flicker under her fingers. She lifted the unconscious man, slender compared to her, yet dead weight, and shoved him toward the operatives. Then he rides with us. Non-negotiable. 2. Her surprise, the taller nodded. Fine, but every second counts. They bundled into the truck. As tires spit gravel, Lenya locked eyes with the driver in the rear view mirror. His stare settled on the map scrolling across her palm with every flex. "You know what that really is?" he asked. "A flight path," she replied, aware he expected more. Or did Watchman forget to mention? He mentioned. The driver throttled up, slaloming through service alleys. "Problem is, that path was scrubbed from every satellite 2 months ago, classified beyond black. Anyone wearing it should be dead or sitting in a vault." Lenya folded her hand, letting sleeve and glove hide the ink. "I'd call that wishful thinking." The other operative leaned forward, voice hushed. "That ink leads to something bigger than this facility. We're taking you to Sector 12 for debrief. After that, maybe the Arctic Station. Depends on how chatty you are. I'll talk when I see credentials." He offered a grim smile. Credentials stopped meaning anything the day your map got erased. They barreled through the North Service Gate moments before a final explosion ripped the fuselage in half, a plume of superheated chemicals chasing them like a pyroclastic wave. The driver punched a nitrous, engine screaming down an emergency klaxon. Chorused behind. Through the rear window, Lenya watched flames summit the yard fence and lick the night. The trainee groaned beside her, coming round. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck, counting beats. At least he still had some. The taller operative tapped a SatLink handset. "Watchman, package secured. Proceeding to drop point." Static, then the same baritone. "Course deviation detected. Adjust 7 degrees west. Drone escort inbound." Lenya arched a brow. "Drone escort? That fuel truck can't outrun a Reaper if someone's feeling unfriendly." The driver shrugged. "Maybe it's friendly." A distant hum resolved overhead rotors. Not jet wine. An unmanned VTOL painted in stealth matte swooped low, sensors glowing. It angled to shadow them, matching speed. "Ever seen that model?" she asked. "Only in prototypes," the second operative murmured. "Someone wants you alive, operator." She filed the term. Operator again, not instructor. They knew a version of her she hadn't been since leaving the covert programs. Minutes later they skidded off-road, weaving between pine trunks, headlights extinguished. The drone flicked an IR strobe, guiding them to a camouflaged hangar half buried in earth. Massive blast doors rumbled open as the truck slid inside. Chemical scrubbers hissed, bathing them in negative ion mist. A row of armed technicians waited, not with rifles, but fingerprint scanners and biometric tablets. One approached. "Lenya Vogt, present your left palm." She hesitated. The trainee was hauled onto a gurney by medics. Operatives flanked her. But none touched her. "Why here?" she asked. The technician gestured toward a vertical light panel. "Because your ink reacted to VX, IR radiation. The map is glowing like a beacon on every sensitive camera. Someone's tracking it as we speak." That analysis chilled her. The tattoo had mechanisms she still didn't fully grasp, but resisted EMP scrubs, turned invisible under certain spectra. If it was emissive now, adversaries could triangulate. She presented her palm. The scanner projected a lattice of blue lasers. Symbols on her skin pulsed, rearranging impossible. A new coordinate string emerged in the center, overwriting the old route. The technician gasped. "It's updating." Her wrist pad buzzed with an inbound handshake. "Unknown host requesting." She denied. A second handshake hammered higher priority, burrowing past firewalls. Her HUD flashed crimson as the map streamed to an external receiver. "Cut the link." She barked. But the technician was already yanking cables, shouting for Faraday shielding. Too late. The VTOL drone outside ignited, its power core overloaded by the data surge. A blinding flare bloomed through the hangar slit, followed by electromagnetic shockwave that killed every light. Emergency red strobes blinked on, bathing them in hellish color. Sirens wailed. Heavy doors started closing. The taller operative cursed. They turned the drone into a beacon bomb. Whoever watched the feed now knows where you are. Lenya's heart slotted into that combat rhythm. Decide, move, decide again. She leaned close to the trainee's gurney. He opened heavy eyelids, dazed. Can you walk? She asked. He blinked, nodded weakly. She ripped monitors free. Then you're with me. We exit before those doors lock. The operatives exchanged. Looks caught between orders and survival. She didn't wait, sprinting toward the narrowing gap. The trainee staggered after, adrenaline kicking past pain. Halfway, Watchman's voice boomed over the hangar PA, no longer calm. Operator vote, stand down. You are jeopardizing containment. Lenya vaulted a tool bench, catching the trainees. Arm, contain this, she muttered, and hurled a breech charge from her belt onto the door's control track. A thunderclap of sparks froze the hydraulics. The gap held, just wide enough. She shoved the trainee through first, then dove into the moonlit pine barrens as alarms cut to dead silence behind her. The operatives followed a heartbeat later, breathing ragged. One laughed in disbelief. Well, Watchman's going to dock. My pay. Lenya didn't smile. She pointed toward a deer trail winding deeper into forest. We move until dawn. Anyone slows, I leave them. The trainee coughed a laugh. Yes, ma'am. Miles of dark timber awaited, and somewhere beyond. The reason her map rewrote itself mid-scan, an answer encoded in ink, volatile as nerve. Gas, greater than drop a if you'd bet on survival when the map changes the rules. The wind carried distant rotor thumps, multiple vectors converging. Lenya pulled her sidearm, chambered around, and started walking. Comment your craziest rescue story below. Someone might need that courage tonight. A searchlight flickered over treetops, slicing the dark like a promise. The last operative whispered, "We're already surrounded." Lenya listened, hearing drone's electric whine. Her lips curved into a predator's calm. Good, saves us the walk. She raised her weapon at the falling light as a hollow-suited figure descended, aiming. A tranquilizer rifle straight at her heart. The forest exploded with white flashbangs. Impact shuddered through the command bunker as the rogue drone detonated against the reinforced blast wall, flaying concrete into a hail of dust and rebar splinters. Lenya Vogt pressed a forearm across her mouth, lungs tightening in the shock waves. After pressure, but her eyes stayed pinned to the tactical display, its once neat grid now smeared by static and warning GLYPHS. She could not afford a single blink of panic. Watchman's encrypted channel still hissed in her ear, his baritone unhurried even as the compound shivered like a struck anvil. "Your window narrows, operator," he murmured. "In 4 minutes, the second wave arrives. Automatics only stop if we prove we can navigate them." Lenya's gaze dropped to the ink coiled around her left forearm. Interlaced circles and latitude lines others mistook for abstract art. Now, at last she admitted the truth even to herself, her father's final cartographic code, a flight map older than most of the airframes on this base, but still the only corridor that bypassed the Sentinel defense satellites. She flexed her hand, feeling old phantom pain where shrapnel once kissed tendon. "Vector shield perimeter," she called on the public net. "All units fall back from Zone Delta. Automated turrets will realign in T-2. You'll see the pattern shift, trust it. Move when the east-facing guns cycle down." No sooner had she spoken than voices burst in a chorus of disbelief. Men who'd scoffed at her lean frame, who'd muttered "paper soldier" when she first walked the tarmac, now demanded proof. Lenya granted none. Proof wasted seconds. She pivoted to the operations table, swept aside a tangle of unmapped circuits, and unfurled the low-glare wrist projector she'd scavenged an hour ago. Touch by touch, she overlaid her tattoo's geometry onto the compound's aerial diagram, aligning meridians with fuel tank warrens, suture points with power conduits. The pattern blossomed like an orchid made of math, and where its petals overlapped sensor arrays, blind spots shimmered into view. Her pulse steadied, as if the map pulsed back. "Drop in the chat," she heard herself whisper, some part of her mind already speaking to the unseen audience beyond these walls. "If you've ever been underestimated by someone who never saw your whole story." Sirens bled through crumbling corridors. Arc lights failed, reignited, failed again. The compound's backbone was a stutter now, but the gate where evac choppers waited remained just outside the kill zone. Lenya stabbed coordinates into the drone intercept program, rewriting, targeting tables that corporate engineers swore were ironclad. Her mother's lessons on surgical triage resurfaced in the code cut here. Clamp there, cauterize the bleed. She silenced one turret cluster, then another, each snuff turret granting a sliver of corridor wide enough for human hope. Frozen. Seconds felt like elastic twine, stretching near to snap. Asterisk, this story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. Asterisk outside. The survivors began to move, staggering line of bruised torsos. Smoke-black faces lit by the sudden hush of gunfire, ceasing exactly where Lenya's overlay predicted. A corporal half-dragged, half-carried. His sergeant through the breach, shouting for medics. Watchman's voice returned, softer, almost reverent. "Beautiful work. But you know the last test, don't you?" She did. The corridor she'd carved for others did not reach the northern pad where the prototype, stealth lifter payload, the compound's entire forensic server, still waited in lockdown. If Watchman's forces seized that data, entire disaster relief. Networks worldwide would be compromised, black-marketed. WEPONIZED.LEN. Waya sprinted. Her boots hammered a path through corridors warped by heat. Overhead pipes banged with superheated coolant, bursting scalding spray that hissed on cracked tile. She navigated like memory had replaced sight, wrist projector spraying shifting arcs of light on the smoke. Men behind shouted for her to stop that. The evac bird needed her to board, that she'd done enough. She answered by cutting power to the blast door ahead, jamming a boot through when hydraulics failed. Inside the hangar, the stealth lifter loomed, a matte V of carbon, nose angled, toward a partially collapsed roof panel. Sparks rained from sagging joists. Its port wing already bore shrapnel scars. A trio of armed infiltrators prowled beneath, scanning with pulse rifles. Lenya dropped prone behind a tool cabinet. Her breathing shallowed into that ancient rhythm, farther taught. 4 beats in, hold 2, 4 out. Her heart decelerated like a sniper settling onto glass. Memories threaded the present, watching her father lay chalk on a concrete floor, drawing playground versions of this sacred map, while her mother recited arteries and pressure points. Ink and anatomy, root and remedy. She eased the choke on a pneumatic wrench and hurled it across the bay. The clatter drew 2 infiltrators left. As they turned, she surged the other way, rolling beneath the lifter's belly. Up close, she saw the biometric clamp sealing its cockpit, a military-grade lock keyed to a DN, a sequence logged only to Watchman. She smiled thinly. Secrets missed something. Her tattoo contained not just latitude but histograms, genomes encoded in color gradations invisible under ordinary light. She angled her wrist beneath the scanner. Indigo lines flared, the map's western coast blooming ultraviolet. The system recognized what no human eye could: her father's genome. Embedded in pigment. The cockpit hissed open. Asterisk drop a. If you've ever kept a skill hidden until the perfect moment. Asterisk, she slid into the pilot rig. The HUD flickered, half. Its functions damaged, but gyro controls fed live. She keyed vertical thrust at 30%, enough to hover, not enough to tempt the collapsing rooftop below. Infiltrators realized the betrayal. Pulse rounds lanced upward, scoring the fuselage. Alarms howled. Lenya hooked a finger through the overhead emergency cable, tore it loose, and fashioned a crude harness around her waist. One pulse round breached the fuel line, blue jets of plasma, whistling past her calves. She grimaced, banked starboard, and punched a macro that dumped decoy micro-drones from the cargo bay. They fell like chrome rain, each one broadcasting the map's dummy iterations, flooding every nearby sensor with ghosts. Turrets awakened, hunting phantoms. Lenya angled for the gap in the roof. The wingtip shaved concrete, scattering dust like comet tail. She rolled thrusters full. The lifter clawed skyward into a dawn no one had expected to see. Below, the compound's perimeter turrets now fed corrupted IFF tables turned inward on Watchman's second wave, shredding hostile drones before they breached. Friend or foe became friend and foe until circuits melted. A mile high, Lenya leveled. The lifter's engines rattled protest. Hydraulics leaked amber along the console. She keyed an open broadcast. Vector shield, this is Vote in Prototype Sierra 1. Mission log will auto-uplink when I breach civilian net. If you copy, stand by for data burst, containing the full Sentinel override. We end this today. Static, then cheers broke. Even men who once mocked her now shouted her calsign. Inkling. She set course for the nearest secure. Note a hospital ship anchored off the coast, its helipad rated for half this weight. But the navigation suite was gone, fried by EMP backwash. Lenya turned her forearm toward the canopy, letting sunlight reveal the map one more time. She traced courses with her fingertip on the glass, each mark mirrored by silent ocean beneath. Shear gathered, buffeting the injured lifter. A klaxon blared. Engine 3 overheating. She rerouted coolant, sacrificed cabin environmental controls. Temperature soared. Sweat pooled in her collar. Outside, sky shifted from gray to ember as sunrise flared. You're clear, Watchman's voice came, not over comms, but from the passenger seat. Lenya jerked, instinct dragging her sidearm half free until she saw the seat empty. A recorded message had triggered, keyed to altitude. Remember, operator. The voice echoed. A map is useless unless someone dares walk it. You've walked further than most. Farewell. She almost laughed almost. Instead she throttled forward, scanning the horizon for the white hull of Hope's Horizon. The hospital ship. Smoke trailed behind. Engine 3 coughed flame. She coaxed. Remaining turbines, bleeding altitude so gradual, it measured like trust. At 600 feet, ship's deck appeared, fresh, paint white with a red cross as wide as a hangar. Lenya exhaled a promise and brought Sierra 1 down. Skids screaming. On steel, medics rushed as canopy slid back. She unclipped, legs rubber, and passed the precious forensic drive into the nearest gloved hands. Behind, the lifter's engines died with relief. Deck officers motioned her clear, just as fire crews foamed the leaking fuel. She walked toward the bridge, head ringing. On her wrist, the ink that once meant secrecy now felt like confession. She glanced back at the smoldering craft. Reporter on the ship's rail raised a camera. Lenya lifted her wrist, letting Lens drink the map under sunrise. Here, she thought, *, draw your own corridors. Save who you can. * far across the water. The compound continued to burn, but its people were alive and its data free. Lenya allowed herself a singular silent moment, thinking of her parents, of every drill that shaped this mastery. Compassion and calibration, art and algorithm. Then she squared shoulders. There would be debriefs, inquiries, more operations that needed quiet hands. But first, one message for those still watching. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.